Well, the president and his campaign continue to perpetuate the insidious lie that widespread voter fraud won Joe Biden the election. There are still plenty of establishment Republicans, particularly senators, who are just giving cover to that myth. Like, for instance, Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson, who just a few days after the election refused to say if he thought it was legitimate. And then just yesterday, after the Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, comes out and said there's no widespread election fraud, Johnson tells CNN, quote, I think there are still enough questions outstanding and that they have to present evidence that there was no fraud. But while Johnson is saying one thing in public, it seems to have been given up on the fraud narrative in private. We know this thanks to a piece published today on The Bulwark. Mark Becker, who knows Johnson from his days as a county-level Republican chairman, recounts a recent phone call in which with the senator. And according to Becker, the senator told him he knows Joe Biden beat Donald Trump fair and square, but he won't admit it publicly because it would be, quote, political suicide. And Mark Becker, former chair of the Brown County Republican Party in Wisconsin, joins me now. Mark, good to have you, and thanks for joining me. It was a really fascinating piece, and I applaud you for writing it. Tell me about the context of the phone call.
Well, it was, yeah, you think it was an interesting piece. It was an interesting conversation. So, it was, I wanted to reach out to Senator Johnson to just either, I don't know if it was a fool's errand to see if I could sway him from stopping doing what he was doing, or just to pick his brain to see if I could, try to get some other Republicans to see the light a little bit. And so it was really eye-opening to spend some time talking with him and hearing what he had to say.
So there's a distinction here to me, right, between someone's politics. Like, you could think that we should have repeal the income tax and, privatize every service except for police and, be the most right-wing person in the universe. But also, there wasn't fraud. That's just a factual matter about whether there's fraud or not. And I don't know whether these people believe their own myths or not. And my takeaway from your conversation is that Ron Johnson knows the fraud stuff is nonsense. What was your sense?
Well, that's the most frustrating part of this whole thing is even if you don't believe what I wrote, that's fine. Don't believe that. But believe Donald Trump's own attorney general. Just this one time, though. Believe on this one thing, that there wasn't enough fraud in this election to really overturn the results. And if you don't want to believe what I wrote, that's fine again. But believe the people, the Republican elected officials or the election officials in battleground states that are saying the same thing. Joe Biden won. Full stop. And Ron Johnson knows that, but he's decided the political calculations is too great that he doesn't want to tick those people off. So that's what's happening.
So you said to him, do you know that Biden won?
Yeah.
And he said what?
He said, well, sure, I know Joe Biden won, but that's just one of those things. And he was the worst candidate for president in the history of the country. And it's well, what does that say about your guy? But so it's Ron Johnson knows the truth. And what's sad about it is he knows the truth, but he doesn't think the American people deserve to hear it.
Right. So he said it would be political suicide. So you said to him, why don't you come out and say that? And he said what?
Well, there was, 1.6 million people in the state of Wisconsin voted for Donald Trump. And so that is the people, that is the crowd that he feels that he represents. And, I said, well, you're the senator for all of Wisconsin. So it's a frustrating thing to have that conversation and then see what he says in public is so different than what he told me on the phone.
It's interesting, too, because one of the things he told you that struck out to me, I always wonder, what do the people think the game plan is here? And he was like, well, according to your article that he said we have strong institutions, that basically the institutions are strong enough that we're all going to cultivate this mass delusion with him because it's not going to work, essentially. But
right.
what did you get a sense of what the end game is here? At some point, it's not like Trump's going to admit he lost. So it's are you going to keep this up?
I think the end game is, you said it earlier, is that they're just trying to wait it out. Right. And we've been waiting it out for 4 years for this to be over. And so now when we finally have an opportunity for this to literally be over, they're not taking it. And that's so incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. Did it give you any? It seems to me like this is just a very cynical calculation in the end. And it basically is a cynical calculation that literally dozens to hundreds of Republicans are making.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are Republicans all across the country doing the same thing. So, I mean, Ron Johnson isn't unique in this area. This is being done. I mean, you said it, Ted Cruz, and and a lot of them. So it's frustrating because it is so many of them doing the same darn thing, and it's undermining, the most sacred part of our democracy, which is the sanctity of our vote.